Hi everyone, Vega here, and in today's video, a slightly different video to normal. We're going to have an informal talk about some of the local exoplanets in the area. So as you can see, I'm just using a list in Wikipedia here. And interestingly, it shows us the list of the nearest exoplanets. And obviously, the first thing that might spring up to you is that there's now Proxima Centauri D. Let's have a look at that, shall we? So apparently Proxima D is a sub-Earth with at least 1/4 the mass of Earth, and it orbits at around 0.029 astronomical units every 5.1 days. Now that makes me think that it's possible it could be in the habitable zone of Proxima, but I don't think it is, because I know that Proxima Centauri C is outside of the habitable zone, so given that it's D, it's sort of highly unlikely to be inside. Oh no, actually I'm wrong. It says here Proxima D orbits too close to its star to be habitable. So the ABC order of Proxima Centauri clearly isn't in a logical order. An equilibrium temperature of 87 degrees Celsius, that doesn't seem too unreasonable to me. I don't know what anyone else thinks. Obviously 87 degrees on its own is far too hot for human habitation, but it leads me to think that perhaps around the poles, or presumably if it's entirely locked to Proxima, then the far side of the world, assuming there's an atmosphere, which again is possibly unlikely given that it's Proxima is a flare star, but if there were an atmosphere and the heat was propelled around the planet, perhaps in oceans as well, it leads me to think that perhaps Proxima D might be worth a video in the future. In fact, it's does seem quite an interesting proposition, doesn't it? Okay, let's have a look at some of the next ones. So we've got Wolf 359, which is obviously a red dwarf in the local area. 3.8 Earth masses, is so perhaps a super Earth there. Let's have a look at Wolf 359c. Very, very close into the star again. I don't know much about Wolf 359, but I'm presuming again it's a flare star. And yeah, it says here that it receives 3 times more stellar radiation than Earth does, so it's unlikely to be a habitable planet. And again, if we look at B, you can see here that the mass of 43, it's obviously a huge planet it's quite a long way out as well. It would be past the orbit of Mars if it were around the Sun, and of course Wolf 359 is only a little tiny star, so that would be a freezing cold gas giant, probably with well, I mean, it may have some moons, but they're probably of little use, a bit like the ones in our own planetary system. Lande, which is an interesting star because it's on the limits of becoming a K class, if I remember rightly. It's somewhere between an M class red dwarf and a K class yellow dwarf. Interesting star for those reasons. So we've got a B and a C. Again, a super Earth and perhaps a very large. Let's have a quick look at the B there. So they're not. It doesn't seem that they're totally sure about this planet. Close-in planet with an orbital period of just around 10 days, and it's a super Earth of 3.8 solar masses. See a little depiction there. It's quite interesting, isn't it? Unfortunately, again, it says it's too close to the star and therefore too hot to be in the habitable zone at all points, and it's got an eccentric orbit. Those eccentric orbits particularly around red dwarf stars, are quite interesting, aren't they? Because I mean, I don't know, some of you may have seen the video I did earlier on the Gliese 1061 system, which I called the Game of Thrones system, because planets in that system are very eccentric, which does lead, of course, with red dwarfs to the fact that possibly they're not tidally locked, which does make them interesting. So that's Lande 21185. Let's just have a look at a few of the next. Now Epsilon Eridani is an interesting star. Let's just have a quick look at the star itself as well. So Epsilon Eridani, as you can see, is a K2V star. So it's a yellow-orange dwarf, which many people think are the best stars for habitation. As it says here, one of the nearest sun-like stars with a planet. So let's have a look at the planet. It's got a bit of an odd name, hasn't it? Aegea. Planet around Epsilon Eridani. Let's have a look. Discovered in 2008. It says values for its orbital period range from 6.85 to 7.2, so it's obviously quite a long way from the star, if that's the case, which, given that Epsilon Eridani isn't even as powerful as the sun makes me believe that it's going to be a frozen world, unfortunately. Again, I'm not sure that they're certain, are they? This is perhaps one that they're not certain about. No, that's a bit of a disappointment, isn't it? I was hoping that planet might be a bit more interesting. There we can see a little depiction there of perhaps a hypothetical moon around. It's a gas giant, isn't it? Potential habitability. Epsilon Eridani is a target finding programs because it has properties that allow an Earth-like planet to form, but obviously not this particular planet from what I can see, which is a bit of a shame, isn't it? And there's some more. Obviously the Tau Seaside system's a fascinating one, isn't it? Always been one of my favourite systems as well. Anyway, I'm going to stop the video there. Just let me know if you folks like this kind of video where I'm just sort of talking off the top of my head, really. We could carry on doing some more of these exoplanets. Let me know. Hope to see you all next week for another video, and I'll see you on the next one.